I'm a network technician, and a little over a year ago I moved out on my own for the first time. I chose an apartment in Building 7 of the Oak Ridge Residences, located in a quiet area of Tucson, Arizona. It wasn't fancy, but it had what I needed. Decent location, respectful neighbors, and most importantly, rent I could handle without stretching too far. It was a quiet place, with narrow hallways and an old elevator that groaned every time it moved. That never bothered me. Honestly, it added a sort of charm to the building until I started noticing something I couldn't explain. The first time I saw it was one night after work. It was nearly 9. The elevator stopped on the floor below mine, and when the doors slid open, I saw a little boy standing at the back of the cabin. He didn't say anything, didn't even glance at me, just stood there, arms limp at his sides, a backpack hanging from his shoulders. I assumed he was waiting for someone or had gotten on by mistake, so I stepped in with him. I pressed the button for the 4th floor. The doors shut, but when they opened again, he was still there. He hadn't moved. I paused in the doorway, looked at him and asked, "Are you heading to another floor?" No answer, not even a nod. The doors closed again and the elevator kept going up. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he'd get off at another level. But after that night, I started seeing him more often, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, always alone, always inside the elevator. I never saw him walk in, never saw him walk out. At first, I brushed it off, but over time, unease began creeping in. Who was he? Why did no one else seem to notice? He became a constant presence. Every ride, every corner I turned in the hallway, I'd catch sight of his thin frame, always with the same backpack, always silent. I thought about asking someone else in the building, but I was still new and didn't want to come off as strange, so I kept it to myself. I started observing, taking mental notes of times, patterns, body language, and the pattern was always the same. Same elevator, same spot, same hour, and the most disturbing part, I never once saw him come through a door. Before I go on, let me tell you something important. If you enjoy stories like this, go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what you're about to hear isn't made up. It's not some tale to scare you for fun. It's something I saw, something I lived, and even now, I struggle to make sense of it. And the worst part is, I wasn't the only one. After that first encounter, I began noticing the boy more frequently. Sometimes I convinced myself it was just my imagination running wild. Maybe I was exaggerating what I saw, but no, it was real. He was there, always in the same spot, standing inside the elevator, quiet, with that worn, dark blue backpack and a school uniform that looked like it belonged to another decade. The strangest part wasn't the silence. It was that I never saw him do anything, never saw him enter the elevator, never saw him leave, never saw him talk to anyone. He was just there whenever the doors opened, like the elevator was his entire world. Sometimes he stood at the back, sometimes closer to the entrance, but always still, as if waiting for something or someone. I tried paying closer attention. I checked the button panel to see which floor he might have selected, but none were lit. The elevator moved, sure, but without any apparent destination. It would go up, go down, open, and close. And there he was, like he was part of the elevator itself. As if he belonged among the metal walls and the overhead lights, like one more fixture. One morning, I saw him again as I was heading to work. I got in on the 1st floor. He was already inside, didn't look at me. I greeted him out of habit. Morning, nothing. Another night, after I came back from the grocery store, he was there again. Same posture, same silence. No reaction. I started thinking maybe he had a condition. Maybe he didn't speak for some personal reason. I even considered that his parents might live on a higher floor and just let him ride up and down while they were busy. But that theory didn't hold up when I realized that hours would go by and he'd still be there. I'd see him when I came in and then again when I left later, as if he'd never moved. I casually brought it up to Mrs. Graham, who lived on the second floor. She told me there hadn't been any kids in the building for years. Most of the tenants were either older folks or single renters. I shrugged it off, didn't push the conversation. One night, I stared at the hallway security monitor in my apartment. I watched the elevator climb to the 6th floor and stop. The doors opened, and there he was, just standing. But when it came back down and opened again on the ground level, it was empty. I started writing down the times. 7:45 a.m., 10:13 p.m., 3:06 a.m. No consistency, no pattern. But one thing stayed the same. Every time the doors opened, he was inside, and each time I tried to get a good look at his face, it felt like it blurred just a little more. I didn't know his name. I didn't know where he was going. All I knew was he never got out, and I was starting to feel like maybe he wasn't like other children at all. One early morning, I made up my mind I had to find out. I couldn't keep living with that question hanging over me every time I heard the elevator ding. I needed to know where he went, or if he ever went anywhere at all. It was 2:42 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I heard the elevator descending to the ground floor. I peeked through the peephole. The hallway lights flickered, like they always did at that hour. I opened the door quietly, and there it was, the cabin wide open. And of course, he was there. Standing, arms hanging by his sides, head tilted ever so slightly downward. I stepped in. I said nothing. I moved to the farthest corner, trying not to intrude on his space. I pressed the button for the 4th floor, my floor. The panel lit up as usual. The doors closed. The elevator began to rise slowly, but it didn't stop. We passed the 2nd floor, then the 3rd. When we reached the 4th, the light on the button was still on, but the doors never opened. The elevator kept going. The number 5 never showed. Nothing did. The panel suddenly went dark. I swallowed hard. The boy hadn't moved. He didn't seem bothered. It was as if nothing was wrong, like this was normal for him. I thought about pressing the open door button, but it didn't respond. I tried every other button. Nothing. The panel was dead. Then the elevator stopped. A heavy silence filled the cabin. I looked at the boy. His head was now slightly turned in my direction. Not his eyes, just the angle of his body, like he knew I was there, like he was waiting for something. The door opened, but it wasn't any floor I recognized. There was no number on the frame, just a narrow hallway, dimly lit with raw concrete walls. No signs, no doors, just an endless corridor swallowed in silence. I froze. The boy didn't move. Neither did I. The quiet was so thick I could hear my own rapid breathing bouncing off the metal walls. After what felt like an eternity, I hit the closed door button. This time, it worked. The elevator began its descent. No lights, no sounds, and when the doors opened again at the ground floor, the boy was gone. I stumbled out as best I could, breathing heavily, hands shaking. The hallway was silent, the night still. I returned to my apartment without looking back. I stayed awake until sunrise, replaying every second, every glance, every silence. And what disturbed me the most wasn't the elevator moving without a destination. It was that he didn't seem to need one. A few days passed since that night, but the memory stayed sharp, like a splinter under the skin. I couldn't look at the elevator the same way. Every time the doors opened, even if it was empty, I felt the urge to check again. And when I saw him there, the boy, still as ever, posture impossibly precise, my stomach would not. I seriously considered moving out, but something kept me there. A mixture of necessity and obsession. I needed to understand what was happening, to know if I was losing my mind, or if there was something more. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Rebecca from the 3rd floor, down by the mailboxes. She was one of those people who always had something to say, but that day, she seemed different, guarded, distant. "Is something wrong, Julian?" she asked, studying my face. "You look pale." I hesitated for a second. Then I decided to take a risk. "Have you ever seen a child inside the elevator?" She froze. The smile vanished from her face instantly. She looked down and stayed quiet for a few moments. "A child? What age?" 8, maybe 9, thin, wears a dark blue backpack, always alone." She nodded slowly. Then she leaned in closer and whispered, as if she didn't want anyone else to hear. "I used to live on the 6th floor years ago," she said quietly. "There was a family with a son. Very quiet, very polite. One day, he just stopped coming down. They said he went missing at a shopping plaza, but a lot of people believed he never left the building." A chill ran down my spine. "Do you think that—" I started, but she cut me off. "I don't know what I think, son. All I know is that after that, a lot of people asked to be transferred to other units. Even the doorman quit without warning, said the elevator hadn't worked the same since that night. She told me there were attempts to check the security footage, but the system always failed, that the elevator's software reset itself randomly, that sometimes it opened on floors no one had called it to, and that every so often someone new would ask about the boy in the elevator. No one talked much about it, like a wound the building had learned to ignore." I thanked her for being honest. Before she left, she asked just one thing: "If you see him again, don't talk to him. Don't look him straight in the eyes." I nodded, but inside I knew it was too late. I had already seen him. I had already stepped in with him, and somehow that had changed something. That night, as I lay in bed, her words echoed in my mind like a quiet warning. Because if others had seen him before, why was he still there? I thought I could manage the fear by avoiding the elevator. That if I didn't ride it, if I didn't acknowledge the boy, everything would go back to normal. I was wrong. The first sign was subtle. One night around 3 a.m., I heard the elevator descending. I was awake, reading in the living room to keep my mind busy. I checked the clock. 3:06. That same metallic hum, the same creaking of cables. I stood slowly, walked to the door, and peeked through the peephole. The elevator doors were open, and even though I couldn't see inside from that angle, I felt someone was there, standing, waiting. I didn't open the door. I stood still, holding my breath, until the doors closed by themselves. The elevator ascended, without stopping. The next night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, quick steps, like a barefoot child running. I moved toward the door. This time there was no elevator sound, but as I approached, I heard faint breathing on the other side. I yanked the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The light flickered. Silence. I shut the door again, and as I turned around, every light in the apartment went out at once. A brief blackout lasted maybe 3 seconds, just long enough for me to feel that something was very, very wrong. I didn't sleep at all that night. Things got even stranger in the days that followed. One morning, stepping out of the shower, I found small, wet footprints on the floor, as if someone had walked in, dripping water from the entrance down the hallway. I tried convincing myself it was imagination, but every detail started to feel like part of something larger. Another night I heard the doorbell, loud, clear, 3 sharp rings. It was 3:17 a.m. I went to the door and checked the peephole. No one. I opened it slowly. The elevator was open again, and this time I saw him. He was standing inside with his back to me, as if he had just arrived, as if he'd been waiting for me. No need to ring the bell, as if he wanted me to understand that now. He could come to me. I closed the door slowly, leaned against it. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. From that day on, every time I stepped into the hallway, the elevator was already on the ground floor. Open, lights on, and the cabin empty. Or at least, that's what I tried to believe. I started leaving the TV on overnight. I barely slept, ate even less. And the worst part was, no one could help me. What could I even say? that a boy no one else sees is ringing my doorbell in the middle of the night. This wasn't about superstition anymore. It was physical. It was real. And I knew it because the fear didn't come from the elevator anymore. It came from knowing that now he knew where I lived. Avoiding the elevator wasn't enough anymore. Ignoring the signs didn't work. I felt it. Something was closing in. The boy wasn't just a presence in the building. He was part of my life now. My nights, my thoughts. I decided to dig deeper. I started with the current building manager, Mr. Nicholas. A kind man, but tight-lipped. He gave me a strange look when I asked if a child had ever been reported missing in the building. "Why are you asking that?" he said, avoiding my eyes. I explained I'd seen a boy alone in the elevator several times, that he seemed to have no family around, and I was worried for his safety. Nicholas went silent. His voice lowered. "That happened years ago. We don't talk about it, not here." That answer didn't sit well with me. The next day I went to the Tucson Municipal Archives. I asked for access to old records related to the Oak Ridge complex. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but something inside me led the way. I spent hours digging through folders, registry books, and scanned newspaper articles. Found nothing for a long time, until I came across a small news clipping published in a local paper in September 1996. The headline read, "Child mysteriously vanishes from residential building." I read every line carefully. The report said an 8-year-old boy living on the 6th floor of Building 7 was reported missing by his parents after going to the hallway to retrieve a ball. He never came back. No witnesses, no forced entry. And the strangest part, the elevator showed no malfunctions, but it failed to log any movement for 47 minutes that night. The family moved away weeks later. The case was closed as unsolved disappearance. There was a photo, grainy, digitized from a damaged negative, but I recognized him instantly. The same face, the same expression, the same school uniform with the white collar I had seen countless times inside the elevator. His name was blacked out in the physical file, marked over with a thick marker, as if someone had tried to erase his existence. I returned to the building with that clipping folded in my pocket. I must have read it 20 more times that night. I knew I'd uncovered something I wasn't supposed to, because if that child vanished over 2 decades ago, why was he still appearing at 3:33 every night? Why was I the only one who could see him? And most terrifying of all, if no one else spoke of him, was it because they'd learned to live with it? Or because for them it was already too late? Since finding that article, everything changed. The elevator wasn't just unsettling anymore. It felt alive, as if it had been waiting for me, as if it knew that I now knew the truth. Every night, exactly at 3:33 a.m., the same pattern repeated. First a faint humming sound, then the metallic tension of the cables tightening, and finally, the dry ding of the doors opening, even if no one had called it. I'd leave my room shaking, more certain each night that this wasn't a coincidence. I'd open my apartment door slowly, and without fail, there it was, the elevator, wide open. Sometimes empty, other times the boy stood inside, silent, still. The light inside always flickered, but it wasn't a typical electrical flicker. It was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a signal, as if the machine was trying to speak to me. One early morning, I decided not to open the door. I stood behind it, my back pressed to the wood. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. Even with the door shut, I heard the elevator chime. Once, twice, 3 times, like it was insisting. Another night, the hallway lights outside went out suddenly, right at the same hour. I didn't open the door, but I saw a faint glow seeping in beneath it. The elevator's light. That cold, sterile light that never seemed to turn off. I started noticing other things. Every time I used the elevator during the day, it would stop on the 6th floor for no reason. Every time, even if no one had called it. The doors would slide open, revealing an empty corridor. Sometimes they'd stay open longer than usual, as if waiting for something. or someone. One afternoon after work, I saw the elevator idle at the ground level. I walked over. The doors opened, and for just a split second, I swear, I saw the boy's silhouette reflected in the side mirror, though the cabin was completely empty. My hands trembled, my heart pounded. It was as if my body had already accepted what my mind refused to acknowledge. I wasn't approaching the elevator anymore. It was coming for me. One night, I had a dream so vivid I couldn't tell if I was asleep. I saw myself stepping into the elevator. The boy reached for my hand. He didn't speak, just stared. And the elevator began descending, deeper and deeper, until the display stopped showing numbers. I woke at exactly 3:33 a.m. The elevator was on my floor, doors wide open, the light inside flickering. That night, I couldn't resist. It wasn't fear anymore, or curiosity. It felt more like surrender, as if, after all that time resisting, my body had decided to move on its own. At 3:33 a.m., I heard the elevator descending slowly. I rose without thinking, crossed the hallway, and opened my apartment door. There it was, the elevator, open, and inside, him. Standing in the center, closer than usual. He was looking at me. This time, I knew it. His eyes were dark, glassy, but they saw me. No expression, no fear, just a complete, inhuman stillness. I stepped forward, crossed the threshold. The doors closed with a soft metallic sigh. The button for my floor, 4, wasn't lit. None of the buttons were. I hadn't pressed any, neither had he. Then the elevator began to move, not upward. I felt it immediately. We were going down, but not like before. Not at any normal speed. We were descending so slowly, like we were floating in a bottomless shaft. I glanced at the panel. Nothing. No numbers illuminated. The side mirrors were fogged up, as if the air itself was damp, like the space was breathing. The boy didn't move, but now his head was slightly tilted toward me. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just waited. The silence was so heavy I could hear every breath I took. Every heartbeat echoed through the steel walls. After what felt like a lifetime, the doors opened. This wasn't a floor in the building. Before us stretched a narrow hallway. No windows, no signs. The walls were unfinished concrete. At the far end, a single bulb flickered, barely hanging by a cable, and halfway down the corridor, a door, slightly ajar. A faint light spilled out, and a child's voice, my name, whispered, like someone remembering, like they were calling it back into existence. Julian, I froze. Didn't move. The boy took a step forward, not out of the elevator, just inside it, closer to me. I pressed the door close button again. Nothing. I held it down, gripping it hard, as if that might break the spell. Finally, the doors began to shut. He didn't stop me, just kept watching until the gap narrowed into a slit and vanished. The elevator rose, slow, silent. When I reached my floor, the air felt different, colder, thicker. I walked back to my door, trembling. Once inside, I locked everything. No lights, no sounds. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, no longer sure if I was awake or trapped in something else. Because that level, it doesn't exist on any building plan. For hours, I couldn't tell if it had really happened. The elevator, the numberless corridor, the half-open door, the voice that whispered my name. It was all so vivid. It hurt. But when I tried to say it aloud, it sounded like madness. At sunrise, I got up. The city was waking up, untouched by it all. I opened the curtains. Sunlight poured in like any ordinary day, and for a moment, I doubted everything. I decided to check the building's blueprints. I went to the property manager, pretended I was thinking about buying a second unit on another floor, and asked to see the structural layout. He gave me a printed copy. Floor levels, emergency exits, elevators, stairs. I counted the floors, 6 residential levels. A small maintenance basement, nothing else. No sign of the hallway I'd seen. But the most disturbing part? A faint, erased line near the bottom margin. Barely visible. A thin trace, like there had once been another sub-level, deliberately removed. That night, the elevator opened by itself again, 3:33 on the dot. But this time I didn't go down. I stood at my door, watching the cabin glow, empty, or so it seemed. No boy, no sound, just that flickering light and a folded school record lying on the floor of the elevator. I stepped closer, picked it up. It was old, damp in spots. The faded logo of an elementary school was still barely visible. The name had mostly worn off. Only 3 letters remained, written in pale blue ink. J.N. My stomach sank. I went back to the apartment, set the paper on the table, sat there staring at it for minutes that felt like hours. And then I realized this wasn't an invitation. It was a reminder, a mark, something telling me I had already stepped in, and maybe there was no way out. Days passed. Everything seemed calm. No more night visits. No more elevators waiting with open doors. Until one early morning, I woke drenched in sweat. The clock read 4:17. I'd been dreaming of the elevator descending, but in the dream, I wasn't alone. The boy held my hand. And the most terrifying part wasn't his presence. It was what he whispered as we went down. "You don't need to go back. You're already here." I leapt out of bed and ran to the door, opened it. Nothing, empty hallway. But when I turned to go back, I saw something on the far wall, barely lit by the ceiling light. A handprint, small, smudged in something like ash. A child's hand. Since then, I live with the certainty that even though I returned to my floor, a part of me is still down there, and I don't know how long I can keep pretending I don't feel it. I left Building 7 2 months ago, packed everything in one afternoon, told no one, said nothing to neighbors, didn't cancel utilities. I just left, moved to another part of town, to a walk-up, no elevators, only stairs. I needed to get away. From him, from it. But it wasn't enough. For a few days, things were peaceful. No strange noises. No flickering lights at the same time each night. No old papers showing up in places they shouldn't. I clung to that peace like someone gripping the edge of a cliff. Until it all began again. One evening, walking through a shopping center, I passed by a bank of elevators. The doors opened by themselves. Empty. Silent. But just for a moment, so brief, I swear I saw a small figure inside. Turned away, just like before. I didn't go near. I kept walking, but my whole body tensed, like I'd felt it before I saw it. Another morning in my new building, I heard the main entrance door swing open by itself. I went down slowly. No one. But the utility room door, which is always locked, was ajar. Inside, on the concrete floor, was a crumpled sheet of paper, the same school record, now even more worn, still showing those same letters, J.N. That's when I began to accept what I hadn't wanted to. Maybe it was never the building, not the elevator, not even the boy. It was me. I saw him. I stepped in. I crossed the line others had spent their lives avoiding. And now, he still sees me. Sometimes I wake up exactly at 3:33 a.m. There are no sounds, no lights, but I know he's there. Not in the room, not in the hallway, closer, in a reflection, in the oven glass, in the black screen of the TV, always standing, always waiting. The last time I used an elevator was by accident. I was visiting a relative at the hospital. Without thinking, I pressed the button. When the doors opened, I stepped forward and saw them, small, worn sneakers, shoelaces undone, right in the center of the cabin. I didn't dare look up. I froze, stepped back. The doors closed. Since then, I avoid elevators completely. I take the stairs, even if it's 12 flights. I walk with headphones to drown out the sounds, but it doesn't matter, because deep down, I know I'm not running. I'm just delaying. And if you ever see a child in an elevator, alone, silent, not moving, don't step inside, don't look at him, and above all, Never meet his gaze. Because once you do, he sees you too, and he'll keep seeing you forever.